Good evening. I would like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Tuesday, September 15th, 2020, and the Portland Board of Public Education is meeting virtually through Zoom. May I please ask the superintendent to call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Atkinson?
Here.
Mr. Balfont?
Here.
Ms. Bondo?
Présente.
Mr. Burke?
Here.
Ms. Figdor?
Here.
Ms. Morioni?
Here.
Ms. Thompson?
Here.
Ms. Trevorrow?
Here.
Ms. Yangala?
Yes, I'm here.
And Chair Rodriguez.
Presente. Let's get the flag on the screen for the Pledge of Allegiance, and then I'll guide us through it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. For the report of the chair, just have a quick welcome back note. On behalf of the board, now that we've had our first full days of the 2020 and 2021 school year, I'd like to welcome back all of our students and families, teachers, staff, and the rest of our teams of educators across the district. And while every start of the school year brings uncertainties and worries, the pandemic clearly makes this year uniquely challenging, and therefore heightened sense of anxiety and frustration naturally accompany the first week for many of us. The board is grateful for all the amazing people across the district who have been working nonstop for several months preparing to get us ready to welcome students back. We're lucky to have incredibly hardworking staff who care deeply about our students and their families. And we're of course beyond grateful for all of our PPS dedicated teachers as well. We know it hasn't been easy preparing for the start of the school year, and so we really appreciate everything you've done to prepare us to get us here today. And we thank you also for continuing to put our students first while navigating this new way of teaching. It's important to note that there's been and will continue to be a lot of things that will constantly change as we're all learning to live our lives differently. And things are far from perfect in our reopening plan. And this is the reality for many school districts, not just for Portland Public Schools. And so as I said a moment ago, I recognize that anxiety, fear, and frustration are part of this moment for many of us. By working together, however, and supporting each other, I know that we can successfully navigate the challenges that will come up and make this a healthy and successful year for all of us. Having said that, I'll hand it over to the superintendent for his report, which also includes some recognitions and an update on our fall athletic programming and also a special ed audit report. Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ann, can you check chat real quick? And Greg, there's somebody also in the chat that needs to be showed the door. Okay, I would like to begin my comments today by recognizing the original inhabitants of the land on which our city and schools stand, the Maliseet, Micmac, Penobscot, and Passamaquoddy tribes, known collectively as the Wabanaki, or people of the Dawnland. We're honored to have their children among our students today. Also, today is the first day of National Hispanic Heritage Month. During this month, we celebrate the many contributions of people of Latinx heritage to our country in every realm, from science to the arts, from politics to advocacy, and from business to public service. Portland Public Schools has a growing population of Latinx students, and I hope that they and their families will see evidence of our belief in their potential and our sense of duty to help them fulfill that potential. Anne, could you promote Gavin to the panel, please?
Yeah, Greg is running the meeting. So
Oh,
Greg.
sorry. Greg, can you promote Gavin from the attendees to, yeah, there we go. Hello, Gavin. This evening, I'm happy to announce that Gavin Glider, girls tennis coach at Portland High, has been named the 2019 United States Professional Tennis Association Coach of the Year for New England. This prestigious award makes Gavin eligible for the National Coach of the Year award from this organization. Gavin is entering his second season as Portland High's girls head coach. He's been a tennis coach since 2012 and has been a tennis professional for over 16 years. He holds an elite professional certification with the United States Professional Tennis Association and a performance specialist in tennis professional certification with the Professional Tennis Registry. Gavin also is a teaching pro at Foresight Fitness and Tennis. At the same time, Gavin is starting his 8th year as a social studies teacher here at Portland High. He holds 2 master's degrees, one in education from the University of Southern Maine and another in American history from the University of Maine. He recently passed his comprehensive doctoral examinations in American history at the University of Maine. In addition to coaching and teaching, Gavin is also the student government sponsor at Portland High. Congratulations, Gavin, on this well-deserved award. As part of our people goal, the Portland Public Schools strives to attract and retain outstanding staff, and it's clear that you meet that description. We're fortunate to have such a talented coach and dedicated teacher who is an asset to our students both inside and outside of the classroom. So congratulations, Gavin, on this award, and thank you very much for everything that you do.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Yesterday was our first full day with students. Months of planning, last week's dry runs, and student and family orientations were left behind, and we were able to launch into the 2020-2021 school year. As I drove around to schools yesterday, it was just awesome to see students in our schools again for the first time in 6 months. It was great to see them happy and connecting with our amazing staff and their classmates. We learned from our dry runs last year and made adjustments based on those lessons. While I'm proud of where we are and I'm confident that we have layers of precautions in place, there will continue to be a need to make adjustments as circumstances change and we learn new things. As I said in my recorded back to school message, it will take all of us working together, being vigilant, and being patient that will allow us to continue to provide in-person instruction to our students. I would like to thank the many people who have worked tirelessly to get us to this point, but today I would like to thank our frontline staff, our principals, teachers, and educational technicians who returned in earnest yesterday to do the work that they do so well. I could not be more proud or inspired by their dedication and commitment to their craft. I would like to mention for you that, and the public, that the Center for Educational Equity at the University of Maryland recently released a publication about reopening schools in this pandemic. I'm happy to report that it features our work as a district to reopen with equity as a guiding principle. It feels great to have the work of our district featured for national colleagues. I would like to take a moment to thank Assistant Superintendents Malia Nally and Aaron Townsend in particular for leading our reopening planning efforts and doing so centering on equity for our students who need the most support. Last week, we discussed that we were uncertain that we would be able to open all of our schools because of staffing concerns. Late last week, we determined that we were sufficiently staffed to support all of our reopening plans in all of our elementary schools yesterday. While we still have a handful of ELL teacher vacancies and a few ed tech positions, given where we were at the start of last week, this was truly amazing progress and a testament to the hard work of our school leaders and HR department. I witnessed firsthand how Barbara Stoddard's team worked round the clock to assist principals with the recruitment efforts and then processing and onboarding what were close to 100 hires in the past 2 weeks. As a result of the ELL staffing that I just mentioned and some space and transportation concerns, we are delaying the start of 4 days a week ILD programming at several schools. Students will attend their scheduled 2 days while we phase in those plans. This is not how we want to live out our equity commitment in reopening, so be assured that we will redouble our efforts to get this on track as soon as possible. We are also phasing in some of our low-incidence special education students. However, this is as it was originally planned. We're still finalizing enrollment in some of the community partner programming, but that also has made significant progress in the last couple of years. This is a tremendous collaboration between our community partners and our Department of Community Partnerships and our academics department. We're now working to figure out how to provide transportation to the extent possible to further meet the needs of our families and make these programs a more viable option. On Thursday, we submitted our revised application to the Department of Education, to the Maine Department of Education, and we received approval for $1.1 million to support this community partnerships work on the end of the day on Friday. Earlier in the day on Friday, I had the opportunity to meet with the liaisons from the community partners to thank them for their support and their collaboration. I continue to be amazed and grateful for the commitment so many organizations in our city have to creating a viable set of learning environments for our students. Another great example of that commitment is that thanks to the United Way of Greater Portland and generous carpenters and businesses, the Portland Public Schools recently received 204 easels to aid in students' outdoor learning. The easels will hold a whiteboard for teachers to use when teaching their classes outside, and each school received 12 easels for their outdoor spaces. The Portland Public Schools is very grateful to United Way, which organized the effort, and to carpenters Dan Heckerthorn, John Mullen, Mike McQuigan, and Jeff Grinvalski, who built all the easels with support from Hancock Lumber, Home Depot, and the Habitat for Humanity Restore. Brooke Teller, our outdoor learning coordinator, and our outdoor liaisons have readied 156 outdoor learning spaces to start school this fall. Learning outdoors carries many benefits, particularly during the pandemic, and outdoor learning can be an opportunity for students to be out in the fresh air and become more connected to nature and the environment. The amazing gift of these easels to our teachers and students will greatly enhance the outdoor learning experience. We also opened our remote academy on Monday, our newest and largest school with almost 1,000 students. Last Thursday, we hosted over 400 parents in a webinar orientation. I'm grateful to our curriculum director, Jesse Robinson, who is also serving as our RA, Remote Academy principal, and to her amazing team for all that they've done to create the Remote Academy in record time. Based on the guidance received from MPA, DOE, and MSMA, we are proceeding with the start of fall sports as originally scheduled. As you know, this has been a bit of a roller coaster ride, and I am grateful that we are now in a place to launch the season with the necessary precautions. The guidance we received is that the school board is not required to take any action to approve this, so that is why we are presenting this as part of my report. And now I will turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Aaron Townsend, who will lead a presentation focusing on the health and safety requirements and our plans to meet them. So, Aaron.
Great. Good evening, everybody. It's exciting to be here on the second day of school and starting to feel like some old familiar routines, while certainly new, are also present. So we appreciate, again, your support and kind of confidence in us and being able to pull off the reopening work that we've done. So appreciate the significant deliberations and consideration you guys had, but also then the confidence in moving forward with that. So while we're, as the superintendent has stated, in addition to starting regular school, we appreciate also now having clarity on fall sports for this year and starting our fall sports seasons. Tonight, we'll update you on the specific guidance provided by MPA and the measures we are taking to promote student and staff health and safety. Lance Johnson, who will be joining us momentarily. There is a Portland High School parent event this evening that he's also presenting at. So he'll be sliding in a moment. But we have Mike Daly, our co-curricular director at Deering High, who will, has joined us this evening to help detail us on these plans. So I will share my screen so that we can work through our presentation. We talk through the specifics of the high school plan. I'll as well speak a bit about how that then also extends to our middle school plan. And both of these, this PowerPoint deck as well as the middle school plan, have been added to, uploaded to board docs for both your and the public's availability. So Mike, would you like to get started?
Sure. Thanks, Aaron. So we're going to just give you an update on high school athletics and what the MPA fall sports guidelines that were passed and sent to us on September 10th that we've enacted to start high school sports at Portland and Deering Highs for the fall. Go to the next slide. For us in general, obviously, we're committed to offering our students outdoor, safe physical activity after school. And as indicated in our reopening plan, we will follow all the guidelines to offer high school athletic activities for our students. As such, September 10th, as I said, the MPA announced the approval of school sports guidance, and they did this in the coordination with the Department of Education and Department of Health and Human Services for select fall sports in the return to competition for competitive activities in Maine, and we can provide a copy of that document for the board. The MPA approved fall sports for interscholastic competition, and the sports they approved are boys and girls cross country, boys and girls soccer, golf, which we now have at both schools, and then field hockey, which is a co-op program between Portland and Deering. Continuing on that, for the MPA, their fall sports that they did not approve for interscholastic competition are tackle football and volleyball. And you'll understand in a second why we use the word tackle football, because there is a second piece of this. But the MPA for football and volleyball is continuing to work with the sports committees to look at providing an interscholastic season in either late winter or spring. And there's a lot of moving pieces to that, so that's going to probably take another month to 6 weeks to figure that out. So we expect to get more of an update as the fall goes on from the MPA. To keep students active and engaged, the MPA provided guidance that schools may provide a 7v7 flag or touch football program this fall as more of an activity, not interscholastic necessarily, and with no pads or equipment. Volleyball must be played outside and could be an activity that could be offered this fall as well. Sideline cheer, which is technically not a competitive sport in the fall, but they do participate, has been identified as moderate risk as well, mainly because of tumbling. But the MPA said they may be offered as a fall activity as well, and all of these will be outdoors. Obviously, football would be, but volleyball and cheer will be outdoors. Lance and I have talked, and we met with the other ADs in the conference, and we have decided to plan for Portland and Deering to offer flag football, volleyball, outdoors, and sideline cheer as activities conducted outdoors and in compliance with the guidelines. So the MPA sent us additional safety guidelines to conduct those sports, and we'll be following those guidelines. There is discussion now about possibly having intercity scrimmages for flag football and volleyball, and those are things that are under consideration that to discuss. Just some points of clarification for high school athletics and from the MPA. No inside practices are to be held this fall. No inside athletic activities whatsoever. Should there be inclement weather, the teams may not move inside for a practice or any activity. We have talked, if there's obviously from an emergency action plan standpoint, If there is lightning, then we would go inside areas that maintain social distancing, and we could keep cohorts of 30. So we have outdoor sheds or outdoor areas. But again, we can't bring teams inside to shelter from the rain. So in essence, that would mean if it rains and it's not lightning or dangerous, that activity could be ended for the day based upon the weather. Should a county be designated yellow or red, there would be no practices or games held until which time they're designated green. Currently, York County has no co-curricular activities because they're in yellow. Schools have to follow the governor's executive order for size limits. I think we'll get into that in a minute, but it has to be 100 people outdoors at a facility. And we have voted as ADs in the SMA not to have any fans based upon those guidelines at our fall competitions. So we passed that as an AD group. All athletes, other than those involved in the game, coaches, officials, staff, and spectators, must always wear a mask. And this includes officials. So for instance, when student athletes are on the bench and not in the game, they must have a mask on. So if they're not participating, they will always have a mask on, and everybody else will, and all adults must. Thank you. For the high school athletic trainers, they're a very key piece of this, and they really are partners in this, working with the school nurse and the administration. Greg Tozy at Deering and Ryan Lucas at Portland will be on site for every session and will help us do health screening. They'll tend to each injury and medical emergency. That's key because in past times, sometimes a coach would help tape an ankle or put on a Band-Aid. That is not going to happen. The only people who will do that would be our athletic trainers with gloves on and full safety equipment. Each coach is trained currently in CPR, first aid, and all these other certifications, including cardiac arrest, concussions, but also now there's a new class for COVID-19. And so they're all required to take that class and be certified, as are the athletic trainers and the co-curricular directors. Staff members will wear face coverings at all times, including when caring for student athletes as athletic trainers. Workout areas are specifically located to keep the student athletes spread out, so we try to put them in small cohorts of 10, although the rules for the competitive sports are a group of 30 in your cohort, but still spaced out to maintain social distancing. Student athletes are not allowed into the training room unless they make an appointment with the athletic trainer. So again, meeting with the athletic trainers will be by appointment. And again, sometimes those treatments, if we could do it, will be conducted outdoors. Sanitation and cleaning protocols, there are many, and we follow them all. Hand sanitizer will be available before, during, and after each training session. We encourage student athletes when they walk in to clean their hands. When they leave, to clean their hands. Whoever walks in, to sanitize. Whoever walks out, to sanitize. Clean workout clothing after every training session. There is no sharing of clothing, so that's something that came up today with our soccer scrimmages. We can give them scrimmage vests, but then they will keep those. We do not want them back. We cannot collect them. They will be theirs to clean, and this may lead to some extra expense, very minor, where we'll need to buy additional scrimmage vests because, again, we can't have student athletes handing scrimmage vests in or returning them. They need to wash them and keep them. Each student athlete must have their own water bottle. This is a re-education piece that they're not always used to. Currently, they've been very good about it in bringing their own water bottle and putting their name on it. We will not provide cups or any other water bottles. They have to have their own water for practices. Student athletes are encouraged to shower and clean at home after training sessions. There'll be no locker room access for showers, no locker room access at all. The only facilities they could use would be bathrooms, and they have to do it adhering to the requirements for a number of occupants in that bathroom. And we have our coaches make sure that they escort them to that area as well. All coaches will be provided disinfecting kits, so we put together disinfecting kits for every sport, for every coach, for every team. And that's a picture of it below, so they will have that. What the coaches do with that is they clean everything before practice, and then they clean everything after practice. And if there's any chance where a ball might hit someone's hand or they have any kind of question, they're going to take that equipment out and clean it or just remove it till the end of practice. And that's exactly what's going to happen during a game as well. And equipment, again, is cleaned at the end by the coaches. Student athletes provide their own masks for every training session. We will have some extras in an emergency. We actually had a couple of kids rip theirs today. So we did have extra masks, and we provided those to them, but they must bring their own masks to walk into the facility. Disposable masks need to be disposed of properly, and ideally we would use gloves to do that and to pick them up. So there's an instance in a cross-country meet, they have to wear a mask, a disposable, to the starting line, and then they take it off when they start. So then our athletic trainers are going to have to pick those up with gloves and remove those from the area for the next wave of runners to start. Masks will be required when social distancing cannot be maintained. And during physical activity, they do not have to wear masks if it's extreme physical activity. If they stop and stand for any period of time, they should have their masks back on. And again, coaches masks 100% of the time, and staff. And again, they should be worn properly. How to wear a mask, I think we all know that by now, but we provide that guidance at our fields. We have pictures and guidance for the student athletes to help them. Just some prevention tips, things that we'll be following. We want them to avoid large events, but also grouping before practice or after practice or before a game or after a game. And so for our facilities, when we do get to games, they will enter from one area and exit a completely different part of the facility, because we don't want any crossover between teams or visiting teams or large groups. We also have talked to them about not gathering at the facility outside before practice and to stay separate, which is hard for the kids. We understand they want to be together. They're really excited to start fall sports, and it's been a great 2 days. And so it's almost heartbreaking a little bit to have them separate outside, because they're so happy to be together and starting sports. But we have to do that as well and maintain that social distancing. And these are just some other prevention tips that we share with them and go over with them as far as disinfecting any equipment. So the one thing, there is a little bit, one requirement with mouth guards: if you take it out of your mouth, you now have to disinfect the mouth guard and your hands. And this happens a little bit frequently with soccer, so this is going to be a new learned behavior for the student athletes. And they've been great about it so far. So that's it. And the daily screening form that we have the MPA requires a screening, or recommends a screening just from our app in the morning that goes out for Portland Public Schools students who are coming to school in person. This is a recommendation that we have a separate screening for student athletes. So what we're doing is we have 2 layers of that. We send a Google Doc every day that they have to fill out that day. And they have to fill it out between noontime and 2 or practice time, because we don't want them, and the guidance is not to fill it out early in the day, because they might not feel great when they get around to practice time. So my deadline that we set up is 2 o'clock. They have to submit the Google form. And you can also, if they miss that form or can't get it in time for any reason, then we do an in-person screening with all the same questions before they step on the field for coaches and student athletes. And that's done by either the co-curricular director or the athletic trainer. Anytime there's any questions about their answers, where we'd have to get into being concerned about exposure to COVID, we can get into that in a second. I will show you. Then we would pull them from practice and have them go home and not participate. So we had a student athlete kind of indicate they weren't sure, but it ended up being they went to see our nurse, and he had a runny nose from allergies, so he was cleared. But he did report that he did have a runny nose to us. So the kids are great. They're being honest and really making it easy for us. So this is just a copy of the Deering Google form. So what do we do right now? It's a little labor intensive, but we're going to put the link to this into the Google Classrooms for the student athletes. But the best way to do it, I've been sending this out to every athlete every night and saying, please complete this tomorrow. Send it back to me by 2 o'clock. We sort it, give it to the coaches. These are the student athletes who are cleared. And then if we have any red flags from their answers, at that point, then we would clarify that with the athletic trainers or the co-curricular director, and if need be, the nurse, and follow all of the CDC guidelines and our procedures. And then we were asked by the MPA to add an assumption of risk statement. So we didn't include this much language. We actually put it at the bottom of the Google Doc form that they fill out, and they only fill it out once. So they have to have an assumption of risk, which was advised by the MPA, not required, and everybody's filled that out as well. And so we're at the point where we're up and running after 2 days. Kids are being retrained, and I was just at girls soccer and cross country, and they're following all the procedures. They're used to it already. They're being very good, and so now we have schedules, and the schedules are being put into pods for the competitive sports. So that means regional pods around Portland and Cumberland County. And we just got a bunch of the schedules for soccer, and we have cross country and golf already. And for example, soccer is going to be shortened to an 8-game season rather than 14, and the postseason format will vary. There's going to be more opportunities for postseason for cross country and golf because they're less risky on the rating scale. So they'll have a chance to have a regional or a state competition where soccer would not because of the risk rating. Again, spectators not permitted. And those are just some of the other details from the MPA. I think that's about it. Sorry, that's a lot to throw at you at once, but hopefully that clarifies where we are with fall sports. And both Lance and I are at the point where we had put a pause on beginning the other activities that weren't approved by the MPA to give us a few days to get up and running and kind of work out the kinks with the competitive sports that were approved. And so we're both on board to be ready to offer the opportunities for cheer, football, and volleyball starting on Thursday. Lance, do you have anything? Sorry.
Yeah, we're going to start. Sorry, I'm a little late. I came from a 10th to 12th grade parent meeting for Portland High School parents. Yeah, we're going to start volleyball on Thursday, and we're going to start football and cheering tomorrow afternoon at 4. So we just held them off for a couple days so we could get the other sports up and running. But overall, things have gone very, very smoothly. The student athletes have been very open to our guidance and instruction from our coaches. It wasn't perfect. I'm not going to say it was perfect. Some of the stuff in the parking lot when kids were showing up, I wasn't real happy with. But we've talked to them and they know we have to do things a certain way. We're going to follow the guidelines strictly that the MPA has put in place, and the kids have been very supportive.
Great. All right. Thanks, Mike and Lance, for all your preparations while we awaited the twists and turns of the kind of state approval process and all your collaboration with other ADs to kind of plan for this eventuality so that once we got the guidance, we were ready to go. So appreciate all the work that you guys have been putting in. I wanted to just share briefly a little bit so that people know as well how this flows down to the middle school level. They as well have been in collaboration with other ADs from other middle school programs around the region. And due to the pandemic this year, we will not be offering interscholastic sports at the middle school level, which is similar to the other surrounding districts. So as a kind of regional group, a decision had been made to not be able to offer interscholastic sports. That's primarily because of the implementation of the hybrid model and the inability for students to kind of self-transport to get to school on their alternate days. However, we will be offering intramural sports as an activity that's available to students at the middle school in similar offerings and kind of with similar procedures as is outlined here for the high school sports. So those will begin a little bit later on October 5th. So that they have some time to get up and running and get, kind of communicate with students and as well so that transportation can get themselves oriented with all of our new routines and then be able to provide the late bus as we have traditionally had more in Lincoln to be able to ensure all students, kind of have access and transportation is not a barrier for their participation. So the coaches and advisors will follow similar health and safety protocols as spelled out by Mike and Lance there. And we're, looking forward to providing these opportunities in service of our goal around wellness for students, both, physical, but also social emotional wellness, of finding healthy and safe ways to help students, have opportunities to connect and participate in a variety of activities. That's one of our core goals for this year. So thank you. And we're looking forward to, continuing to manage this as we move forward in our reopening.
Javier, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Next, our Special Education Director, Deb Mullis, will present the results of our most recent audit of our special education programming by the Maine Department of Education.
Javier, I'm sorry, Javier. I see Ms. Morioni had raised her hand. So I just want to give her an opportunity. I don't know if she had a comment or a question on the fall sports information.
I do. Is it okay to ask a couple questions, Superintendent?
Sure.
Of the 80s? Okay, thanks. Thank you, first of all, to our assistant superintendents and ADs for all their hard work. Looks like, again, a lot of extra work has gone into and a lot of planning, so thank you so much. I just have a few questions. Some were brought to me by community members and others I just thought of. One is, are you allowing headers in soccer?
They are, yep.
Yeah, okay. And the other one was, how's transportation going to work for competitions?
Yeah, great question. We just got the schedules, actually, and soccer will be the one that's more transportation for us with so many teams. So we're actually having a meeting with Eric and Joel sometime tomorrow, later in the week, to put that all together to figure out how many buses will it take. And it's a little bit of a challenge because we'll just have to work around our school day, because we just release a little bit later than other schools. So we're going to have to kind of juggle the game times a little bit and transportation, but I'm sure we'll work it out.
And then the final question is around esports. You had mentioned earlier, like in August, about possibly exploring esports for the fall or winter. Just wanted to ask again about that.
Yeah, great question, and very timely. We just got an update today from the MPA about esports, and Lance and I are going to talk about it and to see, because it actually is the way they set it up now is it's kind of truncated towards the end of fall into winter. So this could be a really good opportunity to start it or try it, because the way the MPA is setting it up, it actually goes on the back end of fall a little bit, and they just sent that out to us today. So when I saw it, I was excited to look at that. So
great. Well, again, thank you for all your hard work.
Sure.
Thanks.
Sure. Thank you.
Great. And let me also extend my thanks to Mike and Lance and Aaron. I also see that Phil Duraz is in the, who's one of our middle school athletic directors, is in the attendees. So I just want to thank all of these fine folks for tremendous work that they've done. As I said at the beginning, it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride. And I know that I can tell you that in all of our superintendents meetings for the last month, it's taken up at least half of the agenda to sort of follow the comings and goings of the MPA and DOE conversation. So I know this has not been easy to do. And then, as you can see, all of the preparations, the training, and all of those other things that need to go into being able to do it. And, as I said, just about opening school in general, these are, what we learn is that every time that you think you've got everything under control, there's another set of questions that come up. And so just please hang with us, folks, and be patient. As we find what those questions are, we will strive to get them resolved and just keep bringing them our way. So next in my report, I would like to have Special Education Director Deb Mullis present the results of our most recent audit of the special education programming by the Maine Department of Education. These audits take place every 4 years and involve a very comprehensive review of multiple indicators of educational, legal, and financial aspects of our programs. The last report of this nature happened shortly after I began as superintendent, so this really is the first such review during my tenure, and I know that a tremendous amount of work went into this, and Deb is here to share the results from that audit. So I will turn it over to Deb.
Okay, thank you, Javier. Good evening, everyone. Anne, are you able to share that slide deck? If not, I have mine. I can do it.
Yeah, let me make you a presenter.
Oh, I think it says I can share screen.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, then let me see if I can do it.
As you're getting
Oh no, it says it's disabled. Sorry.
You guys are working that out, Deb. When you move your papers, it's making quite a bit of noise by your microphone, so just want to give you...
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I just wanted you to know.
Yeah, good thing.
There you go, Deb. You should be
Okay. Oh boy. Uh-oh.
I have it up, so if you guys make me the co-host, I can share mine.
Oh, thank you, Javier.
Yep.
So while that's coming up, I can reiterate a little bit of what Javier shared. This is a 4-year process for us in special education. Every district in Maine is part of a cohort, and every 4 years, each cohort gets this type of review.
Is it on the screen? I can't see what's on there.
It isn't. It's something else.
I think it might be your second screen.
Okay.
I'm happy to share my screen for Deb so she can just go through.
That would be great.
Yeah. I've got it up right here if you can let me do it.
You're a coach.
Here we go.
Okay. So the process of monitoring actually, it depends on, we're going to go to the next slide, Malia. There are 2 factors that kind of go into the monitoring process, and it's both the federal indicators for special education, so IDEA, which kind of rules our work in special education, and then also a look at the Maine state regulations and the implementation and guidance around our individual education plans for students with disabilities. So the federal indicators are, the items that I listed there. It includes, they review our board policy for things that impact special education, the referral process, interventions, child find, which is how we identify students for special education. They look at our restraint and seclusion policy. And then they also look at our practices and procedures in those items that I listed. So they look at our suspension or expulsion rates. They look at, where we place students in the special education continuum. Child find, they look at secondary transitions, how we are providing a transition plan for students with disabilities as they exit high school. They also look at our staff certification, all of our financial practices, and then just how do we allocate and authorize fund expenditures for special education in general. And then for the IEP IEP part of it for the Maine regulations, they look at, how what is our practice around using the state forms for eligibility in those three areas: speech language and learning disabilities, and the form called the adverse effect form. And then they also put a large amount of emphasis on something they call the electronic monitoring tool, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in just a minute. It's actually an in-depth look at our individual education plans for students with disabilities, and they look at a large number of IEPs across the district. They look at students who are in in-district programs, students in special ed programs that are district special ed programs, and then students who might be in out-of-district placements as well. And then they also look at our transition plans for our students in high school. So the information that they use for the federal indicators comes from the DOE reviewing the information that we provide. They call it a desk audit. So we have to gather up a whole bunch of information. We're actually working on this audit since May of 2019. When we first got, we know when we're up for audit, so the state gives us guidance, and then we start gathering information as soon as, they do our training. They also look at our financial audit records. They look at how we use our local funds, and then also how we use our local entitlement, our federal grant that supports special education. And then they look at things that we are reporting to the state in general: our attendance records, our certification records for staff, our records on restraint and seclusion, our portions of those, a lot of data sets that they pull together and examine. And then for the state review of the IEP, as a district, we had to prepare a little over 100 IEPs. So each of our case managers were responsible for preparing an IEP for review, and they went through that process of reviewing them for 36 indicators that they're looking at when they review these plans. We also had to provide 10 examples of eligibility cases. So that's what they call child find. How are we organizing our information about when a child is referred for special education, and the process of actually, finding that child eligible or not finding that child eligible for special education. And then 10 secondary transition plans, and then 10 out-of-district IEPs. So, it was a hefty load to prepare and to lift, for this group. Our results were, we had the state come to us and do a site visit in February, and they came back in August, on August 24th, and they reviewed an additional 12 records. I gave you a couple of guidance documents that listed what they call a summary of findings. And the summary of findings from the June report, which was based on their February visit, listed 19 areas that they wanted to look at again with the team. So they came back in August, and they asked us to provide another 12 records, random records, and here are our results. So isolated deficiencies are things that they may have found when they actually came and looked at all of our information and found something outside those two areas of federal indicators and state indicators, but still a concern for the team. And, you know, for Portland, they didn't find any isolated deficiencies, which is a great thing. Also, in areas of federal indicators, we were 100% both in compliance and meeting all of the guidelines put out for the federal indicators that I shared in the guidance document. So that included transition plans and child find and, you know, expulsion information, things like that. They did find, out of that original 19 findings, the summary of findings that they sent in June, they did find 3 of those findings still at less than 100%, and those were what they call prong 1 findings, which there are prong 1 findings and prong 2, and prong 1 findings are kind of, I consider them a lower level finding. It's something that we need to take care of at the district level, and something that we adjust and provide professional development for, and we give them evidence of that, and then they let us know if we're clear or not. So the 3 prong 1 findings that they found that were less than 100% had to do with all things very discrete items on the IEP. We needed to get some clear data on the present level. We needed to have consistent citations for our state and local standards for goals. And they wanted something more general in the least restrictive environment statement that we hadn't nailed consistently. So those were 3, like I said, very discrete items that were less than 100%. So as a follow-up and a response, I wrote a letter to the Department of Education, to Dr. Roberta Lucas, and assured her that we were working on those three prong 1 items. The department is actually coming to Portland on the 30th to provide, well, when I say coming, we're Zooming, on the 30th to provide professional development for all of our special education staff, not only in those 3 prong 1 areas, but in all areas of the IEP. It's just good practice to have them here to do that. And we just received, it was postmarked yesterday, but we received it today, an official closure of our monitoring process. So that means the cycle is over, and you know, we fared rather well in this. Actually, I'd say very well. We could have been on something like a corrective action plan, or, you know, another year of monitoring. It could have resulted in a lot of different outcomes, and for this, it didn't, which is, you know, just a testament to the hard work that this group of special educators and related service staff and the support staff that work in special education, you know, the level of work that they're doing in their day-to-day work, because this isn't something that just happens overnight, and it just is a process that you know is just rubber stamped. They have to go through a process of continuously making sure that these things are correct. So, and in FY24, we're going to have a repeat of this same monitoring cycle. So, as you know, I'm retiring at the end of the month, so it will be on to Jesse Applegate to take that over. So, feeling pretty good about that, and I guess that's really the end of what I had to share with you tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Deb. I do want to recognize, as you heard, that Deb, this is one of her last actions as Director of Special Education, and just want to recognize Deb for her tireless efforts on behalf of the district. Nobody is harder working or more committed to the district than she is. I'm incredibly grateful for her dedication and wisdom over the past few years. Deb, on behalf of all of us here, thank you for your work on this incredibly important component of our district. We wish you well, and we're so grateful for the way that you've stuck around after your formal retirement and helped us to close out this process and plan for the opening of the new school year, and also to your agreement and support to help Jesse's onboarding. You are, without a doubt, a class act, and we will absolutely miss you.
Well, thank you, Javier. That's very nice of you.
And that concludes my report.
Javier, we before we move on, Ms. Morioni has her hand raised, and I did have one quick clarifying question, so we can just go through that quickly. Ms. Morioni?
I just want to say congratulations. Anytime you have to do any type of federal review, and it takes, again, 4 years in that work, it's a behemoth amount of work, and I very much appreciate all the time and effort, and you will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morioni. Yeah, I'll echo that, Deb. Obviously, thank you for preparing this report on the audit for us, and certainly for all the work that you've done. It's sad to acknowledge that this will be one of the last times you'll present to us. I'm confident, though, that you won't be too far, and we'll be able to contact you and rely on you for knowledge that you have from the district. I just wanted, if possible, just to clarify one thing. I know I saw it earlier, and as I scrambled to find it, the federal indicators, the one on the suspension rates. Can you tell me where to find what they look for?
Yeah, I got it. So what they're really looking for is the federal indicator that applies to students with disabilities who are in special education. So they look at, so we can't suspend a student with an IEP for a period of longer than 10 days without taking specific action to make sure that their IEP is protected and that that student is receiving the services that they are entitled to as a student with a disability. So they look at, if there were instances of expulsion, or if there were instances where a student was suspended for longer than 10 days, were those pieces in place? Yes, and so that's the federal indicator that they're looking for.
Okay, and of those federal indicators, like you said, we didn't get pinged on any of them.
No, 100%. Yeah.
Good. And then the only other thing that I just wanted to better understand, the part on the least restrictive environment statement, the part that we did get pinged on, what is that? What is exactly? Because I understand the least restrictive environment, how we've come to understand it through other workshops, but in terms of the statement, what does that mean?
So they're looking for, I'll give you the data that the federal guidelines are. They're looking for our students to be in the least restrictive environment, which means they spend the majority of their day, more than 80% of their day, in the general education setting. And they're looking for that number to be at least 61%. Right now, as a district, we're at about 66 or 67%. So we've exceeded that indicator for a number of years, and it's continued to grow by a percentage or two almost every year in recent years.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. And again, Deb, thank you for everything, all your work, and obviously, again, sad that this will be one of the last times we'll hear from you formally here. Javier, so this concluded the superintendent's report. And so we'll move on to the report of the secretary. We have minutes to approve. We have minutes from the August 19th meeting, which we didn't have ready last time. So, excuse me. Consideration and action to approve the minutes of the meeting of August 19th, 2020. Is there a motion? Ms. Bondo, second by Mr. Atkinson. Are there any questions on the motion? Seeing none. Are there any public comments on the motion to approve the minutes from August 19th, 2020? Seeing none. Any further board discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please indicate. Javier, can we do a roll call, please? Okay, sorry.
Yes, and you're muted.
Mr. Atkinson, that was a yes.
Yes.
Mr. Bonfons.
Yes.
Ms. Bondo.
Yes.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Ms. Figdor.
Yes.
Ms. Morioni.
Yes.
Ms. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Trevorrow.
Abstain.
Ms. Yangala.
Yes.
And Chair Rodriguez.
Yes. And so the motion passes 8 in favor and 1 vote abstain. Okay, next, consideration and action to approve the minutes of the meeting of September 1st, 2020. Is there a motion? Mr. Atkinson, second by Ms. Morioni. Are there any questions on the motion? Ms. Figdor?
Just noting that Ms. Thompson's name is misspelled very early on under the first motion.
Thank you, Ms. Figdor. I was going to say
under one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Thompson, is that what you were going to bring up as well?
Yes, I just had an extra O in Thompson. Thank you, Emily.
Okay. All right, so we'll take that as a friendly amendment to correct the typo. Any other board questions? Seeing none. Any any public comment on the Mr. Burke, I'm sorry.
Mr. Burke had his hand up.
Just another friendly amendment that Micmac is spelled incorrectly under the superintendent's land acknowledgement.
Okay. Same thing. We'll take that as a friendly amendment. Is there any public comment on the motion to approve the minutes of September 1st? And, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for further discussion. And seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of September 1st, 2020, please indicate by roll call.
Mr. Atkinson.
Yes.
Mr. Bonfons.
Yes.
Ms. Bondo.
Yes.
Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Ms. Figdor.
Yes.
Ms. Morioni.
Yes.
Ms. Thompson.
Yes.
Ms. Trevorrow.
Abstain.
And Ms. Mangala.
Yes.
And Chair Rodriguez.
Yes. And so the motion passes with 8 votes in favor and 1 vote abstaining. Next, we're moving to the report of the committees. We'll start with curriculum and ed planning. Mr. Balfons.
Great, thank you. So the curriculum committee met last on Wednesday, September 9th. We focused our meeting on the equity policy, and we discussed the goals of the equity policy. We also discussed the roles of the working group and stakeholders, also evaluated the engagement questions for the stakeholders, and then next steps will include sending out invitations to the work group. And that's going to be the focus of our work going forward for the rest of the year, as well as, getting updates on other things as well. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Balfons. Next, for Operations Committee, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. The Operations Committee met via Zoom on August 6th and on September 3rd. And we had an update on the school reopening operations on September 3rd. And just to give some highlights on the food services, we covered the USDA announced extension of summer meals. We got an update on the free and reduced meal applications, as well as farm to school grant. We also heard from transportation, all the precautions that they're making in regards to any concerns they have, accomplishments, so on and so forth. Facilities, we discussed indoor ventilation focus, COVID-19 cleaning strategies, PPE, and outdoor learning. And we also discussed the computer and device, the schedule and the purchases and the DOE resources that are associated with that. And do you want me to wait for other member concerns, or can I do the DABC, BLAC?
I was actually going to ask you if you wanted to do it right now. It makes sense. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So the DABC, the District Advisory Building Committee, will be meeting on Thursday, September 17th via Zoom at 6 p.m. We will be getting an update on LISETH, which myself and Councillor Costa, as well as the superintendent and our facilities team, saw an update on the slides, and it's just out of this world. LISETH looks fantastic. Looks different than when I went there, and that's really good. And we're going to review site phasing, some floor plans, and lead cert update. And I'm working with, or I've asked Steve to work to figure out a way for all of us to visit and see the improvements, as well as the DABC members. So there's more to come on that. The Building Level Advisory Committee will meet via Zoom on the 24th from 5:30 to 6:30. It'll be Longfellow, chaired by, excuse me, Ms. Morioni and Councilor Mavadonis. And 6:30 to 7:30 will be Presumpscott, co-chaired by Chair Rodriguez and Councilor Ali. And on Reiki, 7:30 to 8:30, co-chaired by Councilor, oh boy, why am I having, Thibodeau, and school board member Emily Figdor. And we have a proposed date for a community forum, which is going to be right around October 21st. So that'll be discussed at the BLAC meetings. And I just want to, as part of the facilities, thank, as you all did, the staff, teachers, ed techs, food services, and also the community members really that have stepped up. I just learned one today about the Portland Container Company and them helping us out. So people are really stepping up to the plate. So thank you very much for helping our facilities teams out in our operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Next, we'll go to our finance and personnel, Ms. Trevorrow.
Thank you, Chair. The Finance Committee met last Thursday on September 10th. On the agenda was a discussion about the Coronavirus Relief Fund. As the board, I think, is aware, our district received in excess of $6 million to support our reopening plans, including staffing, outdoor learning spaces, technology, among other things. It was huge assistance to the district, but the funds have to be spent by December 31st. So we had a discussion around what is pretty concerning, that we will have ongoing costs after December 31st. And so we're working on figuring out how to meet that gap. Staff is working on that currently, and there are still a lot of unknowns that will become more clear as the school year begins, in terms of where we're able to find savings in our budget. So there will be more to come on that. Right now, just something to be aware of. And then the other thing we discussed, we just kind of brainstormed on the elementary reconfiguration plan, and kind of if, when, and how to bring that back up for reconsideration. The general sentiment of the committee was that it was a little premature right now, it felt, just given the unknown costs in the budget currently, and the capacity for our staff to be able to take on some of the work that would require bringing that back up. So the next step for that will probably come to the board level for a workshop at some point in the future here. And that was the extent of our meeting. Our next meeting will be on October 8th at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trevorrow. Excuse me, next, we'll go to policy. Ms. Victor.
Thank you, Chair. I can't believe we're getting close to October. Okay, in terms of the work of the policy committee, we have been hard at work updating our student harassment and discrimination policy and procedure. The committee has gotten through most of the work on the policy and are turning next to finalizing the procedure, and then hopefully bringing that, both the policy and the procedure, to the board at one of our next meetings for first read. That has been an effort that's involved the subcommittee of experts in the community, and that's been a tremendous process guided by Aaron Townsend that I think will leave us with allow us to bring to the board a policy that is very well thought out, and so I'm excited to be able to bring that to the board at the next meeting or at a meeting in October. We also have been, at our last meeting, reviewed our technology-related policies for the COVID context, and we'll get to those, I believe, next on our meeting agenda. We've also at our last meeting, had a conversation about taking the next steps to update our law enforcement related policies. And as we discussed when we had the conversation around SROs, this is going to take some time. So that work is getting started. But meanwhile, we as a committee thought that the next step would be to bring the community together. And I've been reaching out to Member Thompson about that to ensure that we're bringing all of the voices to the table and doing some work to kind of repair some of the relationships and engage everyone who is interested in a conversation about looking at the updates to the law enforcement policies that we want to make, really thinking about what is the philosophy that we want to have. And I believe that we talked about doing that in October. And that's starting off, that we would have that conversation before we got into the kind of the details of the policy, the different policies. And then lastly, I just want to highlight that as the board will remember, about a year ago, the Center for Educational Equity did a review of many of our policies affecting some of our most significant policies affecting students. And we've been slowly starting to make our way through those. We, are very committed to going through all of those. The next one that we're really will be focused on is discipline, and so that you should expect to hear more of that soon. And then we have some additional priorities as well, but I'll leave it at that in terms of kind of the focus in over our last couple of meetings. And then just want to highlight that our next meeting is a week from today, Tuesday, the 22nd at 6 p.m.
Thank you, Ms. Victor. Public Affairs Committee, Ms. Bondo?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We didn't have a meeting in August, so we are planning to have a meeting at the end of September. So we will update for public affairs in our next meeting in October. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. Ms. Morioni, is there anything from the Appointments Committee? I wouldn't think so. Yeah, I didn't think so. Is there any other committee or member concern? Seeing none, all I have is a reminder of the next Parent University event. Earlier tonight, an email went out and a Facebook event page has been created. We're going to have a book discussion with some board members helping to facilitate. It's going to be a two-part discussion. First session is going to be on September 28th. The second session is going to be on October 19th, and they're going to run from 5:30 to 7 p.m. We're going to be doing a read along, or rather read before and discuss sections of the Ibram Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist book, which the board had read together over the summer and had their own book club and discussion meetings, which was a really helpful and engaging activity. So again, September 28th and October 19th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. And those, of course, will be virtually, and the Zoom links are included in the Facebook event and the email that went out tonight. If there's no other member and or committee report or member concerns, we'll move on to consent items, and I'll ask the superintendent to please read the list of donations made to the district.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Under Board Policy KCD, the school board accepts by unanimous consent contributions made to the school district of durable goods, goods of significant value and of symbolic importance as required by the policy. All of the donations are listed in the board memo by name and donation accompanying this item. Our practice is that each donor receives a written contribution or acknowledgement expressing our heartfelt gratitude and for their tax purposes. So with that, I would like to thank the many contributors to the Portland Public Schools that have made donations of durable goods, substantial value, and historical or commemorative significance. And this meeting's contributors are $250 from Nathan Aronson for Rowe School families with food insecurity, and $350 from Nancy Harrison and Jane Clayton to help buy pre-K students books for remote learning, and $500 from Bangor Savings Bank to purchase books for the pre-K summer learning packets. And we're very grateful to all of the contributors for their support of our work.
Thank you, Superintendent. Next, we're moving to old business, consideration and action to approve policy IJNDB, student use of school-issued computers, devices, and the internet. Is there a motion? Ms. Victor, second by Mr. Burke. The superintendent, please speak to the motion.
I'm going to allow Assistant Superintendent Townsend to please do that.
Thank you.
All right. So tonight you have in front of you a recommendation to approve revisions to policy IJNDB, the student use of school-issued computers, devices, and the internet. We are seeking to update this policy to more accurately reflect our current situation as we manage through this pandemic and utilize devices in new ways to support teaching and learning. The prior policy was last updated in 2010. And there have obviously been significant changes that necessitated some modernizing of our language to conform to our current context. Some of the key updates that are reflected in the new policy include updating the name of the policy and language throughout to reflect the breadth of technology that students have access to now. So, thus the language around devices, that kind of is more expansive than the prior language in the policy. Including references to Google's G Suite and other third-party services, to third-party internet services that we utilize significantly to support our instructional program. Adding language to more specifically address the role of devices in delivering our instructional program. So there were a few instances that we discussed to kind of more intentionally center that before we are making any decisions around kind of not allowing students to continue to have access to the devices. And then including some additional language to address our compliance with the Children's Internet Protection Act that refers to our systems of kind of filtering and internet monitoring was one of the substantive sections that changed. So the revisions to this policy were informed, initially by consultation with our Director of Data Management, Jamie Kearney, as well as one of our teacher leaders, Sarah Norsworthy, who's a Reiki teacher and current remote academy teacher, who had been doing graduate work in this area. Additionally, we reviewed the Drummond-Woodsum model policy to inform these changes. And the policy committee reviewed this language and voted it out of committee in its August meeting. So we had a first read in our first September meeting. We also are, currently working on the accompanying rules, which is IJNDBR, the rules for internet use. And we'll share those with you as an update at a future meeting as we resolve those. So that's the context for the updates in the policy that you see in front of you this evening.
Great. So for member questions, we'll go to Ms. Thompson to get started.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering if you can elaborate on why it was removed about that we would educate students about safety on the internet, appropriate online behavior, and cyberbullying awareness and response. Are you thinking that you're going to address that in the rules? Because we've had some instances in the past and why that's there. So I'm just wondering why it's being removed.
Yeah, well, a little bit of the redlining is maybe is a little bit confusing. So yes, it definitely is addressed in the rules. That is, a specific section, but the language here. Let me apologize because we didn't have our same systems of redlining in place in some of our transitions. But it is definitely continues to be a part of that. The rules, it's an expectation of the MLTI. So I'll confirm here, but I think in the clean version that language actually remains in place.
Okay.
So,
I'm looking at the one that has where it shows the deleted.
Right. No, I see what
you're section is deleted. Yeah.
I think all the deleted text is actually additions.
Yeah, I think so. I agree. So in the clean copy, we continue to where it says so that is the language, that is the new language that was inserted. So this again, I didn't have access to the original Word document. So the redlining isn't as clean as it typically is for our policy.
Okay, so where you have deleted is actually additions and not deletions?
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's confusing. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Any other board questions? Okay. And just to I guess it was pretty clear from what we just said, but the clean version that is on board docs is accurate, by the way, so we can take a look at it. But the red line one is a little bit misleading. If there's no other questions, we'll go to public comment on the I'm sorry. Let me see. Did I hand? Oh no, that's Ms. Thompson. We'll take public comments on the motion to approve policy IJNDB. If we have any members of the public to speak, I'll go over the rules. Otherwise, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for board discussion. I don't see any hands raised. Let's see. So we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of approving policy IJNDB, student use of school-issued computers, devices, and the internet, by roll call, please indicate.
Mr. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Balfons?
Yes.
Ms. Bondo?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Figdor?
Yes.
Ms. Morioni?
Yes.
Ms. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Trevorrow?
Yes.
And Ms. Yangala?
Yes.
And Chair Rodriguez?
Yes. So the motion passes unanimously with student voting with the majority. Next, we are in new business. We have a first read on policy IJJ, selection of educational materials and a first read on policy IJNC, instructional media centers. And just a reminder that we have a workshop scheduled immediately after the conclusion of our business meeting to go over the work around both of those policies and offer the board an opportunity to ask questions and get clarification ahead of our vote to approve it at our next meeting. Okay, next, we are at personnel items, consideration and action to approve the personnel items listed, election of year candidates. Is there a motion? Mr. Berg, second by Ms. Morioni. Superintendent or Ms. Stoddard want to speak to the motion?
Sure. These are 4 one-year-only candidates that we're asking for you to approve tonight.
Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, I guess just a question. Are these part of the hirings that we made as part of the backfilling of positions?
Yes, that's in general why they are 1 year only.
Yep. All right. We don't have public comment on personnel items, so we'll bring it back if there's any further board discussion. Seeing none, we'll put it to a vote by roll call. Please indicate, by roll call, please indicate whether you're in favor of approving the personnel items listed. Election of teacher candidates, probationary. Superintendent?
Actually, this is 1 year only.
I'm sorry, yeah, I clicked on the wrong one. That's why I was getting confused. This is the 1 year only election of teacher candidates.
Mr. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Balfons?
Yes.
Ms. Bondo?
Yes.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
Ms. Figdor?
Yes.
Ms. Morioni?
Yes.
Ms. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Trevorrow?
Yes.
Ms. Yangala?
Yes.
And Chair Rodriguez?
Yes. And so the motion passes unanimously as well, with student voting with the majority. Next, personnel items, consideration and action to approve personnel items listed, election of year candidates, probationary. Is there a motion? Ms. Morioni, second by Mr. Burke. Barb, you want to speak on this one? Is there anything to add?
No, these are simply regular probationary hires. There are 4 of them for your approval.
Excellent. Any board questions? Seeing none, we don't take public comment on personnel items. So is there any further board discussion? Okay, seeing none, by roll call, please indicate whether you're in favor of approving the personnel items listed, 1 year only, election of teacher candidates, probationary.
Mr. Atkinson?
Yes.
Mr. Balfons?
Yes.
Ms. Bondo?
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Figdor?
Yes.
Ms. Morioni?
Yes.
Ms. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Trevorrow?
Yes.
Ms. Yangala?
Yes.
And Chair Rodriguez?
Yes. And so the motion passes unanimously as well, student voting with a majority. Next, given that it's before the hour of 10 p.m., is there any public comment on items not on this evening's agenda? If I see any hands raised, I'll go over the public comment rules. Okay, I don't see any hands raised, so we'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting. Mr. Burke, Ms. Thompson, second by Mr. Burke. And all those in favor, please indicate, and we can do a hand raised vote. And that's unanimous. We've adjourned once again. We're on a really good streak here. Very respectable hour of 7:30 p.m.